If you go to the gym but you struggle with timing your meals correctly and making sure you get enough protein, then I have some great news for you. What if I told you that there is literally no upper limit to the amount of protein that we can absorb after a workout? For a long time, we were told that the most amount of protein you can have after a workout is only about 25 to 40 grams of protein. If you have any amount more than that, then that protein is going to get oxidized and it's going to get excreted in your urine. In other words, all that extra protein that you're eating is going to be going to waste. Now, if you think about it logically, this would make sense. How can you possibly absorb all that protein at once? But when you look at how we evolved, and animals in nature, this really doesn't make any sense anymore. Carnivores in the wild pretty much always have to go long periods of time without eating until they can get their next kill and then have a big bolus of protein all at once. Now you mean to tell me that that animal has to start dosing its protein into smaller servings every 3 hours? That animal's not gonna do that. Now obviously we're not lions, we are humans. But even our ancestors would do similar things. They would go long periods of time without eating until they could find a good source of food. Right now is the only time where we have been surrounded by an abundance of calories. There is literally food everywhere. Our ancestors, on the other hand, they weren't so lucky. They had to hunt and gather their food, and if they couldn't, then they wouldn't eat. But this is exactly why this new study is so interesting, because it looked exactly at this, at eating a large amount of protein after workouts on humans specifically. So this study is titled "The Anabolic Response to Protein Ingestion During Recovery from Exercise Has No Upper Limit in Magnitude and Duration in Vivo in Humans." So this study was a randomized control trial, and they had 3 different groups. They had these guys work out for 60 minutes, and then after they would either give them 25 grams of protein, or no protein, which is the placebo group, or a whopping 100 grams of protein. And before the study, what they also did is they took biopsies of their muscles and they drew their blood. And they also gave them tracers, and these tracers could track exactly where these amino acids from these proteins were going. And these tracers also helped see whether these amino acids were going to waste or actually being used in their muscles. And what they did is after the workout, after the protein ingestion, they took biopsies again. So what the study first found is the higher amount of protein that they consumed, the more amino acids they saw in the blood, which is not really surprising, right? If you have more protein consumption, then more of that's gonna be broken down into amino acids, and more amino acids are gonna be floating around in your blood. And what they also found is even after 12 hours, those amino acids were still disappearing from people's bloodstream, even in the people that had 100 grams of protein. Now the question is, where were these amino acids going? Were they going to people's muscles, or were they getting oxidized and released from their body? This is where those muscle biopsies came in. And what they found is the group that had 100 grams of protein had significantly more amino acids in their muscles compared to the group that had just 25 grams of protein. Now this is completely different than what we've been told at this point. We were told that you cannot absorb more than 25 to 40 grams of protein after a workout. But here we're seeing that 100 grams of protein is still being absorbed. Now diving into this a little bit more, what they also found is the branched chain amino acids leucine, isoleucine, and valine were significantly higher in the group that had 100 grams of protein versus the group that had 25 grams of protein when looking at their muscle tissue. Now, those are the amino acids that are most key to building muscle. So these people, when they worked out and they had 100 grams of protein right after the workout, they had way more of the right amino acids all going to the right places. Now, what the study also mentioned is the group that had 100 grams of protein did have a little bit more of their protein get oxidized compared to the group that had 25 grams of protein. But the difference was so small that the author said it was negligible. The important amino acids for muscle building still stayed in the right places. Now, does that mean that all of this protein is going to be instantly absorbed into your muscles and turn you into this giant beefcake? Well, no, because it still takes time to digest. The study found that in the 100-gram group, their protein synthesis was about 20% higher in the first 4 hours. But in the next 4 to 12 hours, their protein synthesis was 40% higher. So first of all, simply eating more protein sent a 20% higher signal in those first 4 hours to build more muscle in that 100 gram versus that 25 gram group. But the coolest thing here is that even 12 hours later, there was still more protein synthesis occurring. And that is a main point of this article, that the extra protein that you're eating is not going to waste. It is still being used even 12 hours later. And that means that eating more protein leads to a better anabolic response, both in the short and the long term. And that also means that you don't have to keep eating every 3 hours to make sure you're getting your requirements. You could be someone that does intermittent fasting and has all your protein right after your workout, and that's your only meal for the whole day, and you can still be fine. Now the thing is here that the reason that protein took so long to absorb could also be because of the type of protein that they used. Now again, they use milk protein, and the reason that they use milk protein was because that's the most common type of protein that is consumed in the Western society. But this milk protein had only 20% whey protein, which is the really fast digesting protein, and it had about 80% casein protein, which is really slow digesting. So if you were to use more of that whey protein instead of that casein protein, you would get probably more of that anabolic result in those first 4 hours. Now, if you're worried about a different type of protein actually being more oxidized compared to this casein protein, well, the chances of that are really low based on this study, because even in this study, the amino acids that were oxidized were very limited. So the way I would recommend this is right after a workout, get that whey protein in, because it digests faster and that muscle protein and synthesis will be higher, so you're gonna be maximizing those benefits more right away. And then you can combine this by having a different protein that is more slow digesting, like a casein protein, or a protein from a meat like beef or chicken. And you shouldn't be worried about having too much protein, because you know that all of that right after your workout is still going to lead to an anabolic result. These results are great whether you're an athlete, or if you're someone who does intermittent fasting, or if you're someone who just doesn't want to time all their meals every single day and constantly be worrying about their food. Because now you can have all of that protein right after your workout and still be fine. And when it comes to intermittent fasting, I used to be against intermittent fasting because of this. Because I used to believe that you can only have about 25 to 40 grams of protein in one sitting, and then that's the only amount of protein that you can absorb. So how can you possibly get enough protein in a single day if you're only having one meal in a single day? But now intermittent fasting seems even more legit. Now the last thing I want to talk about is, I think, the most interesting part of this study. How much protein can you have? This study tested 100 grams of protein, but when you look at the data, you'll see that there is no tapering off and no plateauing of that anabolic effect. And the authors even said that the anabolic response to protein ingestion has no apparent upper limit in magnitude and duration in vivo in humans. So how much can you have? Can you have 150 grams? Can you have 200 grams? Well, there will always be an upper limit. First of all, you can be approaching the upper limit of protein consumption. Now, most people don't have to worry about approaching that upper limit of your protein consumption, because the number is so high that most people don't even get near that. The upper limit of protein consumption is about 3.7 grams per kilogram, or 1.7 grams per pound. So if you weigh 170 pounds, that's gonna be about 289 grams of protein in a day. But it's really interesting to see, and I'm hoping that we get some more studies that come out and they compare different types of protein, and they also compare different amounts of protein and see how high we can actually go and get a similar anabolic effect. But this is a huge step in the right direction, and it's a huge sigh of relief for a lot of people, including me, because now I don't have to worry as much about consuming my protein at specific times. I can have a majority of it right after my workout and be fine. Headaches! We all get them, we all hate them, but for some people, there might be some triggers that cause them. So today I'm gonna go over 9 surprising triggers that can cause a headache. Number 1 is grinding your teeth. Your mouth opens and closes because of something called your TMJ joint,